Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Make More Money Now. I'm Gerry Black, marketing writer coach, and I'm here today with Patti Pokorchak, as always, the sales genius. And today we're going to talk about resources that you can use and not use in some cases to get more proficient at selling and a little bit of marketing, but mostly selling. So, Patti, do you want to lead it off?
Yeah, thanks, Gerry, and thank you for your kind words. I'm so modest. And today's episode was motivated by I'm writing a new class, a new sales course for the first MBA sales elective at my university, and I have to pick a textbook, and that meant led me to go to my stash of I don't know 20, 30, 40 sales books and pull out the best of them. And I'm still debating which ones. I have to sort of reread some of them. But I thought, selling is a lifelong, or being a master at sales is kind of a lifelong learning. Like you never stop learning. I picked up one book was written in 93 and he talked about the new way of selling in 1993 and I'm thinking, "Oh yeah, it's changed. In those 28 years, it's changed again about 10 times. We've gone through different fads. There's certain movies like Glengarry, Glen Ross, or even more recently is the Wolf of Wall Street. The sleazy, old-fashioned, super aggressive ways of always be closing, and I can't even watch them. I can't even show them to my students because they just make my skin crawl because they're just ugh, so
Hey,
so.
hey, listen, I got to tell you something. I was heading up a sales meeting at a resort up north. This goes back 20 years or something, probably 30. And I decided it would be instructive to watch Glengarry Glen Ross. Needless to say, with the 95,406 F-bombs flying throughout the movie, it wasn't a big hit with everybody, but I think a lot of people thought it was pretty entertaining.
That's right. And actually, you bring up a good point because I'm going to be starting with some introductory books, because I'm not, our audience is entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, sales professionals, small business owners, and I'm not sure where you're starting. So I'm going to start out with one of my favorite introductory books by Jeffrey James, that Jeffrey with a G, James, and we'll put a list of all the books we reference in the show notes. But it's How to Say It in Business to Business Selling. And again, key, because business to business selling, where you're going out for the business, is very different from consumer marketing, where people come to you, which is more marketing driven rather than outbound sales. And so this book was written by a journalist. And typically I have zero time for non-sales professionals writing sales books, like how-tos. Except Jeffrey's different. And what he did is he went out to the experts in every specialty. So how to write an effective sales message, how to get sales leads through referrals, how to get sales leads through networking. So he went to the specific niche expert in each of those little niches and interviewed them and got the nuggets, because that's what journalists are really great at. Then he very succinctly, because this is a relatively, oh God, it's not even 200 pages, 190 pages. He's got, oh God, how many chapters? 18 chapters, like how to close a B2B deal, how to develop the opportunity. He takes you step by step by step on how to find leads and prospects and how to close them. Extremely well written, and as a primer for how to get started, it's a great book. And then I have to
Nice.
bring up, okay, then the what not to read. Okay, I will save you $35 by not. Okay, Dan Pink is a, yeah, he's a well-known, New York Times bestseller. That doesn't mean he knows how to teach sales.
Do
And
I
unfortunately,
detect a little disdain in your voice?
well, it could have been the vomit signal. Um, I Even before he published his book, I had an online argument going with him because of something. He says, "Oh, just wait till my book; you'll change your mind." So I had to get the book, and because he's a well known author for Drive and other things. To sell as humans. So I will save you the money because the basic premise is we're all in sales all the time, which is something I knew 40 years ago when I started in sales that we're all in the. I teach sales as a life skill. It's negotiating. It's persuading. It's persuading and influencing people. So we're all in sales. If you've got a partner, kids, boss, employees, customers, you're all in sales. So I'll save you the worry, because what he did. Again, he put all sales professionals in one pot, and like I say, it's very, as you well know, one is a marketing game and the other one is an outbound sale. So save your money. Do not buy that one. So what have you got for us, Gerry? Because I know you've picked out some of your.
Well, I've got a few, and I'll start with my kind of mentor from day one,
Oh,
and you can kind of see
oh, Zig
that
Zigler. Yes,
you can
it's been
kind of see
well.
it's been around from day one. Anyway, you get the idea. Now, for anybody out there who hasn't heard of Zig or seen Zig, he's a special treat.
Oh,
Zig is, if you ever get a chance to just go on YouTube, listen to him speak. He puts you in a trance. Zig knows A to Z about selling. And when I say selling, he knows how to give people what they want, and they end up giving him and anybody who kind of follows his kind of process, if you will, what they want. So it's a really good fit. But the reason I picked out this book in particular is because as salespeople, we know that salespeople are great at committing some cardinal sins along the way. And it wasn't too long ago, we did a show on prospecting. And one of my favorite lines, this is the kind of sage advice you get from Zig. It's not this bright, shiny stuff, bright, shiny thing, newfangled way of saying
mhm.
things. You get stuff like this. Somewhere in the book, I looked for it quickly, I couldn't find it, but he's got the initials. His father told him this: YCDB SOYA. And as you slide down a bit, it says, you can't do business sitting on your ass. And that, to me, if you followed that one strategy, that pretty much says it all. Because as salespeople, we can find all kinds of reasons not to
Mhm.
prospect. So that's the kind of advice Zig gives you. He fills in all the details and everything like that. But there are things like that that really are truths in selling. There's just no way around being out there and looking for new
Yeah.
clients and
And
customers.
it's timeless advice. I mean, that is as true as when he said
Yes.
it. He's passed away a
Yes.
year or two ago.
Yeah.
But I quote him too, is that when I say selling is being of service, you're there to help others. And his quote was, if you can find a way to help others meet their goals, they'll help you meet your goals.
Yeah.
Because it's like by selling, if I sell my solution to you and I help you solve your problem, guess what? I make my quota. So it's like, but you can't do one before the other. And if I concentrate on just making my quota and not fulfilling that, it's not a sustainable business model because you're going to get pissed off
Yeah.
clients. So yeah, he's his some of his advice I think is totally timeless. Like it's just good sense, really, really good sense. Excellent.
Okay, over to you. What do you got?
Well, okay. I'm because I was part of the professional speakers for over 10 years, and so I met a lot of professional speakers, and these are my two favorite sales speakers. First of all, okay, this is Jill Harrington, and her book was Uncommon Sales Sense. It was shift your thinking, take new action, boost your sales. And she's British, and I don't know, but she's been an amazing, outstanding keynote speaker on sales for sales leaderships and coaching and training sales professionals. And this just gives you that little, like it's just a different perspective, probably more for more intermediate to professional, more seasoned salespeople. And then a friend, Bill Smalley, intelligent selling, and he talks about and again, many decades of sales experience and sales training and teaching and coaching. and speaking, and he talks about having this new way is it's a shared journey to value. So you partner with your clients. This is more the more complex sales, but you partner with your client to figure out where the value is because they might not know how to get there, and neither do you. They bring the insider view, you bring sort of the outsider objective view of how new solutions can help them. So it's a shared journey to value. And I've used that expression a lot because that's really the way the state of the art sales are. So Bill Smalley, intelligent selling, and Jill Harrington, yeah, totally biased because they're good friends, but they're really really good books because they've stayed in my library because I've had books from friends and they haven't. So what else have you got, Gerry?
There you go. Well, the next one I've got is from a fellow who's been around the gatepost many, many years, and he's an absolute master of marketing and selling because the two go hand in hand. When you're marketing, you need to know how to tell a sales story and put it out there. So his name is Dan Kennedy. Can you see that okay?
Yes, Dan Kennedy. He's again. I've got that same book in my bookcase somewhere. Yeah.
Now you might be wondering why would if you don't market to the affluent, of what use is this book? Well, the reason I sort of introduced this book is because salespeople are masters of deciding what clients will and won't buy.
Oh,
And so they kind of think about, they won't pay that or they won't buy that. In this particular book, when you read this book and see what people spend money on,
hmm
you will never ever make up the mind of your prospect again, because people will spend money on things you would never guess. And there's a couple of examples in here about pets and whatnot. And of course, these are affluent people we're talking about. But I think it's just human nature. A lot of salespeople tend to start thinking about, what isn't possible instead of what is. And when you read a book like this, you really get your eyes open to anything goes. If you can think of it and it seems like a good idea to you and it fits in with the way you do things, send it out there
yeah.
because don't make up the mind for your customers.
Well, I think apropos to this episode is don't judge a book by its cover. And it just because somebody doesn't look like they're a millionaire doesn't mean that they're not.
Yes.
Especially a lot of self-made millionaires, yeah, they look like the normal Joe. And yeah, so never judge a book and never decide what the customer can afford or not can afford because it's don't assume. You know what assume means, right?
Yeah.
Right? So do not assume. Okay, so my version of your Zigler book is Jeffrey Gitomer's Jeffrey with a J Gitomer, the Sales Bible. Now he's a prolific writer. He's written not a million books, but a fair number of books. And as you can see, I use this extensively in my current undergrad sales, entrepreneurial sales, because when I saw this book, and after decades of selling, I learned stuff on it. So it's a good refresher. His style is, well, he's the educational and entertaining. So he's got great stories. He's got great examples. It's well written. It's to sell or not, that is the power question. It's well formatted, and like again, it's the kind of book you would just pick up and always find something that you can use because again, selling and sales is such a huge topic between people's characteristics and personalities and attitudes. And, there's so many variables and there's so much to learn that you just never stop. And then, of course, then the industries, like social media, right? That's a new thing. You have to, as a sales professional, you now have to write concisely in a tweet, for example, or a LinkedIn post. You can't have typos. You can't have bad grammar, so you're always learning. And this is what I'm going to use, or I have been using, and my students love it in the undergrad program. So
Nice.
Now I'll let you do your last book, and then I'll show you my choices for the MBA sales class.
Okay. My last pick relating to sales is I feel like we're doing that lip sync thing they used to do on late night TV. I've chosen the song. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's funny and I'll get out.
Okay.
So my last book is written by a doctor. His name is Dr. Maxwell Malt. He wrote this book. It's called Psycho-Cybernetics. And he
Oh,
wrote
right.
this book
Yes.
50 or 60 years ago. He was a plastic surgeon. And what happened was he would have his patients coming in and my nose is too big, my ears are too big, whatever it happened to be, and he'd fix it. And he started to notice that some people, once he'd fixed the physical affliction they felt they had, some of them were completely different people, but some weren't. So in other words, if you had big ears or something and he made them smaller, you'd still think your ears were too big. So he got into studying the mind and visualization. And he realized that visualization plays, and it's not, at the time, it was a little hocus pocus, but many, many studies have tied the visualization to results, and top athletes, all athletes like use it and whatnot. So the reason I brought it up here today is one of the biggest battles for people. And here's a look at the cover.
Okay. Again, well read, well thumbed
Yeah,
through.
and
Well
this
referenced.
cover, by the way, was done by Salvatore Dali.
Ooh.
And I think you see that basically the story being told is out of the darkness into the light.
Ooh, lovely.
So that's kind of the messaging behind this. But Dr. Malt, he started studying the mind, and it was the reason I brought it in here today is many salespeople lose sales or lose the fight before they even start because they're not right. They don't believe in themselves, right? They see a negative picture, and it's very important, as you know, to think positively. It doesn't mean you're always going to win, but you aren't going to win if you take a negative sort of mindset into your career. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a small business person, you've got to be positive and you've got to think yourself to success. And it's proven that it can be done. So that's another kind of, as I mentioned earlier about, you got to prospect, you got to get up and go get the business. Same thing is you have to think properly if you're going to be a successful salesperson.
Yeah,
that's kind of an overarching thing, but
right. Well, it's twofold. Is one is you've got to be quite self-aware of who you are, what your blind spots are, what your strengths and weaknesses, and then when you relate to somebody else, it's like you've got to adapt to them. I used to think of myself as a chameleon because if you're hyper, I'm going to bring you to be more calm, and if you're like too calm, I'm going to bring you up and make you more lively. So I was just like so instantly I'd have to judge how am I going to relate to you. So that's again, I had to know myself and how I can adapt. And if you're going to be the analytical kind of like, okay, you want to know to the penny how much it's going to cost, I will get you that information. I don't have that at the, but if you want to know ballpark, it's 100,000 give or take 100 grand. It's because there's people like that. They're like, oh, just give me ballpark, and it's just because they don't care about detail because it's like, the nearest thousand is fine, or 10,000. When you're speaking of that big numbers, who cares? But knowing and getting into the minds of the consumer of like, are they playing a game with you? Are they just being great negotiators, or are they really got concerns? So you got to figure out how to escalate or how to handle that. So that's a great suggestion because I stress that a lot in my sales of like it's emotional intelligence that makes the difference. Hello.
Sorry about that, audience.
Hello. Is our time up? Is our time up? So here's my choice.
What have you got to take us home?
Okay. So this book, The Challenge Your Sale, I actually have a guest lecture from Soft Choice come in and actually this is the sales method or process that they use for their almost, I think, 1,200 sales reps that they have now. It's called The Challenge Your Sale. Matt Dixon and Brent Adamson. It's used in a fair number of sales classes, and its main premise is about leading with insights. It's like studies have shown that if you're, for first of all, as a buyer, you're 60% through your journey by the time you contact me. You've got a short list of 3, so it's my sale to lose. And if I ask you a question or give you some insights, and I'm the first one to do so to make you go, nobody's ever asked me that question. If you make my eyebrows go up and go, let me think about that. That's interesting. The buyer will come back to the first person who made them think, basically. So that's the premise of the Challenger sale. I believe it's used at like Microsoft and some major corporations as a way of opening up the sale instead of, hi, how are you? I'm just checking in. It's like, oh God, save me from that.
That's kind of the opposite of the Challenger.
Yeah.
That's the loser sale.
Oh, that's what not to do. But I must admit, selling from the heart, Larry Levine. Yes, I know, and it is not what you think it is. Larry Levine had probably the worst. You might relate to this. Probably one of the worst professional B2B selling. He was selling photocopiers, which when they come from the tech market, photocopier salespeople were like the used car salespeople of the B2B market, right? Yeah. It was a hardware sale. You want to make copies. Here it is. It does so. It's just really a feature heavy, no benefits. Just like but he turned that industry on its head, and he became phenomenally successful. And this is really about, how can I put it? Just getting sales professionals to really up their game of taking responsibility. Again, the self-awareness about if they screw up, take responsibility, fix it, don't make that mistake again. So it's really not what you think, but he wanted to put the heart back into professional sales, which can be lacking. It's where, again, being of service to others.
And I wonder if he wanted to put the heart back into commodity type sales.
Yeah, well, it's
where you don't really think of, it's not sexy or anything like that, but you can bring a level of professionalism to that can elevate you above others.
That's true. And it's putting the relationship into, like you say, a sort of transactional sale of like, oh, I need a new photocopier. I'll call in 3 people, get the cheapest quote, and go with that. But if all of a sudden if it's a choice between the two of us, it's like, whoa, I mean, who do you want to deal with, right? Mm-hmm. And then if you got the sleazy sales guys, like, no, you're not. But now it's like, do I go with the pretty blonde or the the marketing guy, Like, it's still, people are still influenced by people. The more I read, it used to be, the myth, or not the myth, but the framework was like people buy on emotion, but they justify with logic. And now it's like, no, they just go on emotion. It's all emotion. The logic really has nothing to do with it, because they just use logic to justify their emotion. But they go with their gut. They know who they want to deal with. And if you cost a little bit more, it's so worth it, because
probably another way of expressing that too, because I'm well aware of that, buy first on emotion and back it up with logic. But one thing I kind of like that sort of sends that same message and that same meaning, but it's it's a little less specific, is people buy from people they know, like, and trust, right? And the trust part handles the logic part. Like, they're buying you as the salesperson, and that's because they trust you to do right by them. So people buying from people they know, like, and trust, to me, that kind of pulls it all together pretty neatly.
And that hasn't changed over the decades we've both been in business, is that if there is no trust, there is no business, right? And if you do go against your gut and do business with somebody you don't trust, you will regret it. I know from experience. We once bought a cheap sign from somebody who was really unpleasant, and then of course within days the sign broke, and it was just like, too bad, too sad. You've got to buy another one. It was like,
exactly.
There was no customer support or service or anything. So those are the two, and I've got one more that I highly recommend, and even just for the title, gap selling, because I always sort of say this is the status quo, this is where they want to go. There's the gap, and you sell into that gap. So again, it's sort of a different way of visualizing the sort of the before and after. And again, you were talking before about the visualization is when you're selling an intangible service like training or coaching, for example, where it's hard sometimes to get measurables of the before and after. But if you can start saying, what would it feel like if you didn't have discontented employees? What if you had a sales team that were at 150% of target? What would it feel like to you if, and that's sort of the gap, and that's where you start getting them to visualize what the future could look like. And I think that's an important concept, instead of just going, hey, you need this. You need this. It'll be good. Trust me on it. Trust me.
That's probably as effective as it was 100 years ago.
or not. So those are my dilemmas. Those are my choices. I've got a couple months.
Well, it's tough to pick.
Yeah, I know they're all great books, and I think what I do for my classes is I give them a resource list of people to follow and books to get and videos to watch. So it's very easy to get a sales library that will help you sell more effectively at bigger margins and be more confident selling it. So and just by the way, this is good timing for your holiday list. If you give gifts at Christmas, put these books on your list. Okay, you can never have too many sales books.
That's true.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
All right, take care. Bye.